Technology under threat from dinosaurs. Defending the peace. IBS World News.
Hello, viewers. I am Ivy the Android, and here is the latest news. This is footage of last week's major dinosaur outbreak. As you can see, an Exofighter unit was on the scene to stop the raptor swarms. IBS's superior dinosaur forecasting and cutting-edge exosuit technology were able to keep human casualties to 0. Exosuit development is proceeding under the guidance of the next-gen AI, Leviathan. Meanwhile, IBS continues to recruit candidates to become new exofighters, humanity's greatest hope. Here are the latest images of recently developed exosuits.
Exoprimal is an interesting new game and IP from Capcom, and today I'm going to talk about where it succeeds, where it falters, and where it's kind of up in the air. There are way more areas where it succeeds that I believe, so over where it falters, but where it does falter I think can really cause damage to the longevity of the game. However, its unique take on the team-based hero shooter genre, with a heavy injection of PvE into its typical PvP formula, where it's more of PvE with a side helping of VP, you'd be remiss to run away from the title if you just want to play alone without PvP, as that PvP can be nearly completely avoided. But however you choose to play it, the game is an absolute blast, and hopefully that can help keep it moving into the future. Exoprimal launched on Games Pass Ultimate, as well as both the console and PC counterparts of that service, giving it an immediate audience, while also being available for purchase on Xbox standalone, as well as PlayStation and PC via Steam. This gives it one great advantage for a new multiplayer required game: a large initial install base, so matchmaking is indeed very quick. Games Pass provides that necessity of having a audience playing it, and you'll definitely see that when playing it, as an Xbox logo is present next to a lot of players' names. Though, as I've continued playing it over the last few days, more and more non-Xbox indicators are popping up. There are less matches where it's just 10 players showing an Xbox indicator, I'm assuming mostly from Games Pass, albeit some of those could have been purchased on console or the PC Xbox app instead. But it seems like probably good word of mouth, or people interested in the title and seeing gameplay from people playing it maybe via Games Pass or friends on Games Pass. It has spread word of mouth, and more people are purchasing it on other platforms. Now, I did mention this game is PvE with a side helping of VP, making it a PvE VP title. Now, how it toes that line between PvE and PvP is pretty ingenious and a refreshing take on that hero shooter genre. Most of the time, you're just dealing with PvE elements, and the PvP is mostly just relegated to watching some ghosts of the enemy team at specific points throughout the matches. Usually between the different directives you are given within the match. In some cases, at the very end of a match, you'll come into a PvP mission, where even then you don't have actual PvP until the very last portion of that mission directive. So PvP, even when the PvP queue is sparse and pretty brief, the only PvP element that is always available is the ability for each team to send over one player via a Dominator rig within the game as a large dinosaur enemy, such as the Carnotaur or T-Rex or Triceratops in some cases. This is awarded to the team in second place, the team who goes into that final mission second, and then the team leading gets one later on as well. So you're still dealing with a dino with a specific moveset, which is much easier than other players who are operating their exosuits. Wargame does let you choose between PvP, random, or PvE missions. Random will give you a 1.2 experience boost, win or lose. And typically it's just the best mode to play, as you'll get a fun mix of more mission types in each match. So if you want that forced PvP situation, or just the PvE, albeit with only that Dominator to deal with, you do have PvE as an option as well. So Primal's gameplay, however, is where it really shines, and that is very important when you're taking a look at a video game. There are 10 different exosuits that fill out one of the 3 Holy Trinity roles, 4 DPS or Assault exosuits, 3 tanks, and 3 supports. In future updates, we are confirmed to be receiving alpha variants are going to be added for each suit, changing their default weapon functionality. Jedi, who typically uses an assault rifle that verges on the territory of the machine gun, will have a shotgun for close range, and then when aimed, turns into a 5-round burst rifle. Murasame, who typically wields a normal sword to create a powerful counterattack possibilities in the tank role, verging on that of a DPS, will convert its slashing counterattacks into waves of frost damage that are shot out instead. And in the support role, you have, for example, Nimbus, who will change its dual pistols to dual shotguns. These alpha variants will come in a new but overall recognizable visual style, but you can still tell what its base suit was. And speaking of these exosuits, each exosuit plays and feels extremely different, and that is a fantastic feeling. No two feel alike, except as having a primary role, and that is super hard to pull off. Each will earn its own XP alongside your player level, and then the survival pass level, which I'll get to later on about microtransactions in the game. Exosuits, as you play them, will unlock specific module customizations, which modify abilities in a few meaningful ways, like giving something an extra charge or giving you an extra defensive buff when using it, but keep their overall functionality and form. From outside of these exosuit-specific modules, there are also modules that are more broad and sweeping, tied to your player level, which then can be used across all exosuits that adjust the cooldown of, say, your rig item and to movement speed when your health is at critical levels. All of these modules can be leveled up from 1 to 5 and just take a bit of the Bitcoin resources you earn from playing games. Each match is called a war game. They feature multiple objectives that you must complete in 2 parts. The first part has 0 interaction with the other team, albeit just checking them out via the ghosts you can see in your dimension, while they attempt the exact same mission as you. This ranges from killing anywhere from 80 to hundreds of small dinosaurs to killing an X amount of medium and small dinosaurs to defeating a large dinosaur or a series of large dinosaurs, or defending a specific area. After this first part, you are then teleported to the final location, a much quicker and smaller portion of the wargame. Here, the team that arrives second will be given a Dominator to send a player over to the other team's map to try and kill and disrupt their progress. However, after a while, the team who is in the lead will then be given one to sort of try to balance out the havoc that potentially could have been caused and that lead disrupted. Using the Dominator, however, doesn't come without its detractions. One of your teammates leaves your map, leaving it to a 4-person team to complete the objectives. So, plenty of times happen where the support goes brain dead and leaves with that Dominator, leaving no healing support for your team when it's a role that does need to be fulfilled. Typically, it's smarter for a DPS or an extra tank if you have one, and they probably should, and they should take it. The final mission where this Dominator is present is where the PvP occurs if there is any PvP outside of that Dominator. Whether it is only the Dominator, or the last portion of a PvP full mission, where that last leg actually involves contact with the other team's exosuits, surprisingly, it's well balanced. Though the exosuits you unlock later on via player level, Vigilant, Marasume, and Nimbus, as well as a macro transaction, I'll call it, all seem to be a bit better suited for it, albeit much harder to play over the other exosuits. If you lose out, you'll get a brief, snappy insult from the Leviathan AI about you losing and get to watch as your exosuit is torn apart piece by dinosaurs, then explodes. Winning, you just get a 1.5 extra experience. And now, for better or worse, let's cover the campaign and story progress, as that's done completely through just playing multiplayer matches, much like how that was done in the first Titanfall game. The story is advanced by collecting a few data points being gathered from just completing the matches. or lose. There are larger nodes that are then unlocked, providing more information on the world events and characters. Some major cutscenes will play out as you reach different thresholds of the amount of matches made, which are shown, the progress is shown on the main screen of the game. These data points and how they all tie together in the Exoprimal's version of like the corkboard with information and clues shown in the database screen and analysis map. I think including an actual solo campaign, even if it was done with bots, would have been a fun addition, but its lack of this is where I think Capcom went wrong with the pricing of their game, which I'll get to at a later point. Overall, it is a very targeted gameplay loop, but is a ton of fun to play, and I have not tired of it yet. Tight gameplay, unique and identifiable exosuits, simple and fun missions and matches to complete, ranging from escorting what can be described as a payload from other different games, which culminates in a 5v5 PvP between exosuits, to fully cooperative 10-man PvE experiences against a very large dinosaur that has mechanics not otherwise seen in this kind of genre. I think the gameplay aspect is nailed wonderfully with enough variants offered and much more on the way to keep you entertained through promised updates later down the road. Visually, the game looks good overall. Where it looks great is in the exosuit design. Exosuit designs are all unique and visually different so that at a quick glance you can easily tell what exosuit you're looking at, which can be particularly helpful when you get to one of the PvP missions at the end of a war game. This is also true through the various cosmetic skins available for each exosuit, from just color shifts to designs on your exosuit, to skins that alter the look drastically, yet they do resemble the original model. They can look great, but more importantly, they retain their overall design, so at a glance you can tell the important information in all facets of the gameplay, much how Overwatch does it. Abilities and their effects all look great as well. Discernible from one another if you do get into those sometimes active PvP moments. Knowing when you need to avoid an enemy's ultimate move or what ability they're using is super important, or even when your teammates are using their abilities, which in my experience means making up for their shortcomings. Where the game is visually held back is the environments. Well, it's not bad, it's just okay. A destroyed city looks like, well, a destroyed city. It has enough detail, but it lacks overall. Mountain research facilities look like mountain research facilities. Ancient ruins look like ancient ruins. The locations are easily recognizable, and on subsequent playthroughs you can kind of tell where you need to go for the next portion of the mission, but it doesn't look past okay. Which, while it doesn't really detract from the game overall, a bit more attention to some detail, like some additive destruction in the environments from these all-powerful exosuits, would have been welcome. Another major point of design here is the dinosaurs. There are 3 types of dinosaurs. You have or 2 types of overall dinosaurs. You have your regular dinosaurs, and then there are the neosaurs. They all look good, but mass waves or in the heat of battle, you're not really paying attention to most of them. The designs definitely spice up when the larger boss variants, such as a T-Rex or Triceratops, show up, or even the Neo T-Rex in the 10-man PvE mission, but they are serviceable, and outside of a few exceptions and the ability to just be able to tell them apart visually, they aren't that special. I'm not even really going to mention cutscenes. There are so few and not very long, they aren't even really worth mentioning. They look good enough, but their real absence for the alternate method they use to tell the story really cuts them out of the picture, and their use to deliver story isn't really meaningful when 99% of the time you're just listening to audio logs or conversations with a picture of a character speaking popping up. I think one more major point is, how does it run on PC? This has been a year where we've had nothing but very few successful games launching on PC that worked. I can count on one hand more titles that launched that worked than I can't, ones that were broken. Visually, at least the settings on the PC, the game's running great for me. Now, I do typically play in just 1080p. I don't upscale to 4K or anything like that because I like to be able to alt-tab out and click out of the screen, stuff like that. I am running a 13900K as well as a RTX 4090, so I'd hope my system would be able to run this game. But it's running outside of the sparse just crash here or there. The game has had no hiccups for me at all. Nothing server-wise, nothing visually happening or anything like that. So that is very promising as well. One caveat I have to that, though, is how the game acts when you do move out of its window. Sometimes when you switch screens from full screen to an exterior screen, the menu locations where you can actually click on the menu icons will be kind of shifted, and I find myself having to go into either the options and changing the settings around to get them to work again, or just closing the game and restarting it. Borderless window doesn't work very well. Windows doesn't work very well either. So this is one of the games I am playing in full screen, and there's still some of that issue there. From a sound design standpoint, the best portion is the voice acting. Each exosuit has its own personality and voice actor for some reason. While not always in communication, each action and a reaction will typically draw a line from your own exosuit or an allies, such as thanking for a repair or anything like that. Emotes also include unique lines for each exosuit, which are great as well, from dancing to thanking, anything like that, or being angry. The voice acting done by the cast during the story portions is well done as well, and it really needed to be, as audio logs of these conversations really carry the story via the campaign. The voice you hear the most, though, is the Leviathan AI, providing guidance in each wargame, giving tourism advice and tidbits as you sprint from one mission to another within the wargame, or congratulating or chastising you on victory or defeat. Another good sound design point of interest are the dinosaurs, from the overlapping growls and noises of the large raptor packs as they pour out of vortexes and charge you in waves, to the roars and stomping of the much larger and stronger and more dangerous dinosaurs. The audio design is good, that's good, as it's a major portion of the game. Weapons and abilities going off constantly, waves of small raptors tearing down the streets, and large threats such as the T-Rex and Triceratops charging, roaring, and attacking and flipping cars. Now, let it be stated that I've had nothing but fun, and I've had an absolute blast playing Exoprimal. It's a wonderful breath of fresh air in an environment with a gameplay loop in the classic-based team hero shooter with roles, PvE, with PvP and PvEvP, genre and subgenre of games. It looks good. The designs of the exosuits are great. It sounds good. It runs fantastic, and I've had nothing, once again, but fun, and I love that. Once again, we get a fresh and unique take on this style of game when we don't get many new IPs anymore. But the price of Exoprimal is just too high, and I believe this fully. While it's not $70 like Activision Blizzard titles, EA titles, and Sony titles, which are $70 for both physical and for some reason digital. Remember when they said that digital titles would be cheaper than physical? I sure do. $60 is still a steep price for this title. A lack of a dedicated single-player campaign. Short and sparse cutscenes, with most of those cutscenes being relegated to audio files with some photos and some choppy security camera style footage. It's just not quite there and up to par of what a $60 game should be. Exoprimal should have been launched in the AA price range of $29.99 to $39.99 that we see for games of this size, and I believe that the game would have been much better for it. It is a full game included, albeit just only multiplayer PvEvP class-based shooter. $60 is just too much for this price point. One thing that I can say for sure, though, is that the game's future survival and most of its player base is wholly reliant so far upon its Games Pass inclusion at launch. Each game is composed of 10 players, and typically each game has 6+ players playing on an Xbox platform via console or PC. Occasionally I'll see someone playing on Steam via PC, and I'll even rarely see someone on PlayStation. Like, it's happening more often than not, but I've never had a game where anything but Xbox had more players. It's clearly not a free-to-play game that just had a price point slapped on it. The cosmetics you can purchase are very sparse and pointless considering the speed at which the in-game currency, the game throws its in-game currency at you for just playing games, which you can then purchase most of the cosmetics, emotes, stamps, etc. So that's not the issue. It just doesn't include enough for it to be at a AAA price point that it's asking for. Now, this isn't an attack on its quality. It's fantastic, like I've stated. It's fun. But is it worth the barrier of entry at $60? I personally do not think so. Even though I am also playing on a Games Pass, I've thrown around $40 at it in microtransactions, or in this case macrotransactions, because I truly do believe that the game is worth it at that price point. Now, I do believe this $30 to $40 price range is a fantastic range for it. It is multiplayer only. There's no single player component to it. So it's essentially half a game. The gameplay loop is pretty simple. The matches are short, even though there is some variation, which I do find is enough to keep the game going, especially at the price that I paid for it, including what I did actually pay for outside of the Games Pass subscription. It doesn't quite reach that $60. And it would also make more sense to have other inclusions in it, such as a battle pass and other transactions that you can do to help support the title. If this game doesn't really get a sale here soon in the future, even with the included content that is on the way, I am worried for its survival, and then you'd start seeing more developers and publishers shy away from new IPs, thinking that it's the new IP that's the issue, when really it's mostly just the included amount of game available at that price point. Now, like I said, there are also other microtransactions and a couple what you consider macro transactions or larger transactions within this. There's a survival pass, which is your standard battle pass in a live service game. At $9.99, it's definitely not as much as other titles such as Call of Duties or anything like that. There's also cosmetics and emotes as well that you can purchase, though those are actually rather sparse compared to what you can get from just unlocking them in-game via what you unlock for playing the games. There's a few skin packs you can purchase, but not much overall. There's a Head Start kit, which, full disclosure, is one of the things I purchased in that $40 initial investment in the game, I would consider it, which unlocks the 3 player level locked exosuits immediately rather than have you wait until you reach the player level needed, being 20, 30, and 40. I suppose this can be considered pay to win, but really it's just pay to win earlier, as you will unlock these naturally. I do think they can be considered generally more powerful and complex exosuits, but just having access to those immediately was a huge benefit. Let me tell you, Vigilant is great in PvP map situations, deals heavy damage to large dinosaurs, okay with small groups of dinosaurs. Murasame, I believe, is by far the best tank in the game, while not as defensive reliant as, say, Roadblock, has way more than the other tank and can put out damage on the level of a DPS if they're using their tanking abilities correct. And Nimbus is like a support DPS hybrid who switches between damage and healing on the fly. They're fantastic. I don't think they should have been locked behind player level, but here we are, they are. Each exosuit also has its own purchasable skin pack in a small pack. The only skin not available via in-game currency, which doesn't really affect much, it's a cosmetic. As they are just alternate colors, the skins you can already acquire through gameplay. They might look unique, an example of Deadeye's QBW skin, but there's also QBB skin, which is just a black color variant of the white QBW skin, which is one you get via just playing the game. So there is that as well. Yeah, overall, microtransactions present in the game don't do much. They're just there as a means for the player to support the game further past the purchase, and like I said, that purchase should have been $40, around that $40 price point. I would expect to see it drop down to $40 quite often as we hit the sales season this fall. If you do want to purchase it, if you haven't already, if that $60 doesn't bother you now, just wait till then. So while the Head Start can be seen as problematic, as having early access to these exosuits can unbalance the game, someone just playing more time, putting more time into the game would have the same effect. Honestly, these, like I said, should have just been unlocked from the get-go. As it stands, their monetization is fine. It's not awful, but unfortunately, a lot of games with awful monetization schemes started off as not being awful. Hopefully, the game stays on that path, as it's just cosmetics and items that have no gameplay impact. Overall, if you do have Games Pass, be it for console or PC or Ultimate, and you have the means of playing it, I absolutely do think you should give Exoprimal a try. It's a hell of a blast, just shooting, slashing, punching, whatever, these waves of dinosaurs and neosaurs throughout Bukatoa Island. But for those on the PlayStation and those who prefer to play via Steam, really make sure that that title, like I said, is worth $60 to you. Make sure it's something you want to get your value out of. And that comes back to something else. If you are playing on Games Pass on PC and someone wants to play via Steam, you can't party with them. Crossplay is present, but there's no cross-partying. I don't know why Capcom went that route. Other franchises have had success with, cross-platform partying up. Call of Duty being one example, Overwatch being another example, and those all use a third-party ID as well. Exoprimal uses your Capcom ID. You can't form a party with someone on a different platform. Now, Xbox, PC, and console players can form a party, but they can't form a party with a PlayStation user, and a PlayStation user can't form a party with a PC user on Steam, and a PC user on Steam can't form a party with a PC user on Xbox. That's just really unacceptable. That's one of my biggest detractions from the game. Call of Duty manages it using just, it's your Activision or Call of Duty ID, whatever it's called now. Probably soon to be your Microsoft, your Microsoft ID. Then you have other titles that do this successfully as well. Final Fantasy XIV manages it using your PlayStation ID conjoined with your Final Fantasy login, while people on Steam are using their Steam ID conjoined with their Final Fantasy XIV login, with people who are just playing with the standalone launcher. It works for Street Fighter 6, which is also a Capcom title. You can get into lobbies and everything like that. Why can't you do that with Exoprimal? This is something that can be worked out in the future. It's something that should have been worked out at launch. Now, new content is also on the way. Really soon, we are getting a new PvE-only Trials mode, which will have leaderboards to see how you match up against other groups of 5. It is a specified gauntlet run, essentially. It's going to be a specific mission with different modifiers, which have different difficulty levels, which you can challenge with friends and everything, only if they're on the same platform, though, as I previously stated. So that new PvE content is on the way. There's also a Street Fighter 6 crossover that was announced during the Xbox Showcase not too long ago. It's a crossover going both ways. Then we also, on their website, have an announcement for a Monster Hunter crossover on the way. Maybe we'll get a Devil Joe. Maybe we'll get the Angry Pickle Boy as an Exoprimal as a boss. That'd be great. So it does seem like Capcom wants to support this title. It just also seems like Capcom is also stepping on their own toes in that process. No. Exoprimal is an absolute fun time. I can't stress that enough. It has been a blast playing it. I've been playing mostly as a tank, as Murasame. It's been fun. I do love the game, but I've also loved other games that, the developer got in their own way on. SOCOM Confrontation comes to mind. That was a PlayStation 3 exclusive. It was a multiplayer-only SOCOM game that had plenty of issues before SOCOM 4 came out and was somehow worse than SOCOM Confrontation. But Exoprimal is a bit different. It seems like, especially with this oncoming PvE-only mode, that can draw more people in. But like I said, I think it's worth it, especially if you have Games Pass. Worst comes to worse, if you have the PC capable of running it, you can get a Games Pass trial for $1 again and try it and see if it's something you want, then purchase it on Steam, or just go from there and play it on Games Pass on PC if it's something that's worth it to you. It's a blast. It's something I can see myself continuing to play as time comes on, as new updates come out, as new exosuits are added to the game. The gameplay loop is really fun. It's really quick, anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes per match. It's not too long, it's not too short, it's perfect. The gameplay is tight, it's responsive, it's entertaining. Yes, the premise is stupid as fuck, but it's stupid as fuck, but fun. It is fun, and that's the most important part. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this review, please consider giving me a subscribe and giving the video a like. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day. Well, if you excuse me, I have a few more MVPs to win and wreak havoc as Murasame.
Combat test complete. You are victorious. Well done. It is my pleasure to analyze your data. I anticipate similarly effective results in future engagements.
fields of battle.
Behold, the best exo fighters in this war game.